Hey, the power's out. We'll call the power company, see what's going on. I can't. My iPhone's dead and I can't recharge it. Well, check the internet and see what's going on. I can't. The power is out and the computer won't work. Okay, well, might as well go ahead and fix dinner while we wait. We can't. The stove and the oven and the microwave are all electric. Well, it's getting cold in here. Let's turn up the heater anyway. We can't. The furnace is electrically operated. Well, then I guess we sit in the dark, hungry and cold, wonder what's going on. Now that we can do. Hi, this is another episode of Sword of Truth, and I'm your host, John Perry. Our goal is to reel the truth beneath the media lies, internet falsehoods, Hollywood fiction, advertising's deceptions, government cover-ups, and society's misinformation. We hope to get you to think objectively, open-mindedly, and critically, and most importantly, to think for yourself. Life without electricity can be extremely limiting and very uncomfortable and inconvenient, especially for us modern people. Just about everything we rely on is operated by or has an indirect link to the electrical grids that supply power to our homes and businesses, and much of it is powering our infrastructure like water systems, gas systems, internet and communications systems, and it contributes to rail operations and highway safety systems, just to name a few. Without a reliable electrical grid, civilization as we know it cannot be operating successfully or safely. The problem that exists with our national and local electrical systems is that except for a few technological advances in some of the support systems, it's essentially the same as it was well over 100 years ago, and as such it is extremely vulnerable to both national disasters and accidents, overloads, and even simple sabotage. After 100 years, the vast majority of our electrical grid is still above ground and vulnerable to weather and wind accidents and other sources of damage and disabling, as well as being subject to brownouts and blackouts from excessive demands placed on the power supply in different circumstances. Historically, we have had numerous blackouts in major metropolitan areas like New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, and we've had repeated brownouts from demands like the use of heating and air conditioning, especially air conditioning during hot periods like the summer, and a combination of demand and grid failure in major areas from home use, industry, and utilities is not uncommon. In California, the main system can barely handle summer demands from air conditioning and often fails because of that. But the statewide mandate to switch to electrical vehicles is creating an even greater demand, the likes of which the existing grid will not be able to handle if they only reach 50% of the desired EV changeover. Some parts of our country are buying electricity from Canada or from other neighboring states because they cannot meet their own statewide needs, and the carrying system or the transmission system of cables and wires is inadequate to support any growth in power transmission. States and power companies are spending most of their time and money just keeping their system up without doing any real upgrades and increasing the capabilities. The average tornado, hurricane, or even a big thunderstorm can take out entire statewide grids and even affect complete sections of the country with power failures or decreased capabilities of supply. The potential for sabotage is high, and it's very easy to disable and take out large areas if you know anything about any form of sabotage to electrical systems. Not too long ago in the Carolinas, a person or persons with a simple high-powered rifle like a hunting rifle damaged several transformer and relay stations and knocked out power to tens of thousands of people across several counties for many days. They actually had to come in and replace the substation transformers because a few .30 caliber rounds had destroyed them and caused a shorting out of the system. Imagine if a small group of terrorists put together a wide-scale attack like that on several closely timed incidents and knocked out an entire state or region, even creating a demand on reserves and materials to replace, and just using a few simple hunting rifles they could accomplish such. Take that to an extreme with a widespread scheme by some group, and you could cripple numerous states and affect the demand on the national grid system using just simple hunting rifles. By knocking out large sections, it would create an ever-increasing demand, which could cause the others to begin collapsing. No special training or demolitions explosives training just required, but just a few well-aimed shots from hunting rifles. Now think what a well-trained and equipped terrorist group could do with explosives and a systematic attack on key facilities, which are going to affect the widespread grid in itself. I question why the power companies and the government agencies don't push to bury as much of the electrical grid as possible to reduce storm and accident interruption, and why our substations aren't being better shielded to protect them from damages from things like rifle fire or other forms of sabotage without totally blowing them up. The one thing no one likes to consider happening is something that very few people really think of, but it is called a massive electromagnetic pulse attack, or worse, a mass sun coronal ejection that will have the same effect as the EMP. And these mass coronal ejections happen routinely. Back in the 1800s, the world was hit by a massive mass ejection that burned out telephone wires and other systems that had any electrical wire connection. The only reason it didn't create an international disaster was that we had not yet become reliant on electricity. Most of the world was pre-electricity as far as technology. If such an event was to hit us now, it could set us back to the 1800s in capability by blowing out every electrical system in the world. An EMP attack by a foreign adversary could cripple and make defenseless any modern country and their military. Planes wouldn't fly, communications would be out, and even normal vehicle traffic would stop because the vehicle electrical systems would be devastated by the EMP. In terms of our infrastructure, the electrical grid system is probably the most single critical system, but remains in a last century minus condition with almost no real programs to update and protect. Power companies build new power stations, nuclear power plants, hydroelectric dams, and even the windmill and solar power farms that are used to produce power. But all that power is no good if it can't be transmitted to the end user. You have to have some means of transmission. Until we start investing in upgrading the transmission capabilities, developing protection for that system, and putting as much as possible underground, shielding it from EMP effects, protection of substations and relay systems from sabotage, we're going to be in trouble. We're highly vulnerable. If we don't start soon, we could wake up one day in the 19th century, pre-electric civilization, and everything we consider progress would just be unusable junk. Think about it. Without electricity, what good would televisions be, iPhones, computers, electrical vehicles, and all the rest of our high-tech society toys? If there's no electricity to make them work, they're just junk. There aren't that many horses, and there aren't many hand-pump water well systems, so life would be more like the 17th or 18th century. And by the way, our high-tech medical facilities, they'd just be huge buildings with no high-tech and probably not even much low-tech medical equipment, unable to handle the medical emergencies that would come about as a result of total loss of electricity. Scary? Hell yes. We're not prepared to step back in time. Just going back to the 1960s would be destructive and devastating for most people, but at least they had electricity and some other high-tech, so-called high-tech then, capabilities. But if we go back to the 1800s or beyond, billions could die. Hunger, disease, and environmental issues like extreme cold or heat would take out billions of people in short order. Modern man is not prepared to exist without all the high technology and capability we have today. Most people don't have any skills, hardly even have any idea of how to plant a garden. But think about this. Even if you go plant a garden, you've got to water it. And if you don't have electricity, you don't have a functioning water system. While the water system depends primarily on gravity to operate it, it takes electricity to pump the water up to the towers to get them in position to function on gravity. And there are relay stations all along the line, all operated by electricity. It's time that our power companies and our national government woke up and realized how fragile our electric grids are and how easily we can be pushed back into primitive times. Take a look at western North Carolina after Hurricane Helene, and you can see how fast infrastructure systems can collapse, especially electrical. And they did have access in recovery to generators and emergency repairs, which brought them back online fairly quick. What if there was no generator capability, and what if repairs were not possible? Because if a total electrical failure comes about, generators aren't going to work either. Even a few hours or days without electricity will teach you how bad life can be. Let's start preparing so that a loss of electric power permanently doesn't become our new reality. Think about it. Research the system and how fragile it is now, as well as the mass coronal ejection events that occur routinely. But thanks to two things have so far not destroyed us. One thing has been that they have been minor enough that the magnetic fields and atmosphere surrounding the Earth have protected us, with only the side effects of things like the northern lights. Also, the ejections, especially the strong ones, come out and they're very directional in nature, almost like firing a large bullet. And so far, they have missed us. And in July 2012, a massive coronal ejection was headed for the Earth, but for some reason was diverted and went between us and the moon, from what I understand, only coming close enough to give us some atmospheric interference like the northern lights. Had it not been diverted, or if it had not missed, it could have wiped out the entire planet's electrical capabilities. I'm not trying to be a doomsday predictor, but we have to start acting like there is a problem and start working to prevent a large-scale incident. What happened in 1800 had happened before, and it's been recorded many times in things like growth rings of a tree. But it never had any serious effect on civilization because it was all pre-electric civilization. If it's to happen today, the same thing that happened in the 1800s, it could close down the whole globe and could have long-term devastating effects, and it could be so serious that it would take more than decades, it could take centuries to recover. This may sound like science fiction or fantasy, but unfortunately is all too real and is all too possible. Until next time, I hope you keep thinking for yourself, and when you become convinced there is a clear and present danger, then I hope you start contacting your government representatives and power companies, demanding that they take some action to look into this and to start making preparations to protect the electric grid system, especially from things like storms and sabotage. Until then, be blessed and stay positive.